Hi, this is Liam, your narrator here at Home Studio Stories. I just want to say thank you to all of you that are commenting, liking, subscribing, sharing, and of course, listening to the stories. If you have a story you want to send in, please do to homestudiohorror@gmail.com. Alright, let's get into the stories. Amidst the brooding dusk, the abandoned fairground loomed menacingly over the desolate landscape. Its skeletal structures swayed to the mournful tune of the howling wind. The once gleeful laughter of children had long disappeared, replaced by the whispers of restless souls, and a cloying scent of decay hung in the air. Beneath the shadow of the Ferris wheel, 5 brave souls gathered. They had heard whispers of the haunting, of the horrors that lay within the mouldering corners of this forsaken place. They were compelled to confront their darkest fears, drawn to the sight like moths to a flame. "Are we really doing this?" murmured Eliza, a tremor in her voice. "We have to," responded William, his eyes fixed on the looming structures. "We need to know what's going on here, to put an end to the nightmares." The 5 ventured deeper into the fairground, feeling the unseen eyes of malevolent spirits watching their every step. The eerie silence was broken only by the creaking of old wooden beams and the distant rumbles of thunder. As they approached the carousel, its lifeless horses seemed to grin menacingly at them. The music box, long out of tune, began to play a haunting melody, as if it beckoned them closer. "Did you hear that?" Eliza whispered, eyes darting nervously around the darkness. "I don't like this," Emily muttered, clutching at her brother James's arm. "We should leave." "No," insisted William, his voice straining with suppressed fear. "We've come too far to turn back now. We need to see this through." Suddenly, the ghostly apparition of a little girl appeared before them, a malevolent smile etched upon her face.
"Welcome to my playground,"
she said, her voice barely more than a chilling breath.
"Would you like to play?"
"What do you want from us?" James demanded, his voice trembling despite his best efforts.
"I want to play,"
the ghostly child replied, her eyes gleaming with a wicked hunger.
"But you must face your fears to survive my games."
The spectre vanished, and in her place, a door materialized, swallowing their fear. The group entered. Behind the door lay a hall of mirrors, each one reflecting a distorted version of their worst fears. Emily was confronted with the loss of her brother James, his lifeless body crumpled on the floor. William faced his fear of the dark, the shadows swallowing him whole. Eliza, stricken by the fear of abandonment, found herself alone in a desolate world. As each member of the group was forced to confront their deepest fears, their minds began to unravel, the line between reality and the supernatural blurring with every agonizing step. "Why are you doing this to us?" Eliza cried, tears streaming down her face.
"It's the only way,"
the ghostly girl replied, her voice cold and dispassionate.
"To face your fears is to overcome them. If you cannot, you'll become part of the darkness that consumes this place."
Determined to escape the torments, the group fought to overcome their fears, to sever the ties that bound their souls to this forsaken place. One by one, they found the strength to break free from the clutches of their tormentor, the haunted fairground shuddering as it lost its grip on them. As the sun began to rise over the desolate landscape, the 5 friends emerged from the haunted fairground, their hearts pounding, their minds scarred by the horrors they'd faced. But they had survived, and in facing their deepest fears, they had found strength they never knew they possessed. As they walked away from the fairground, the sun cast its golden light upon their faces, dispelling the shadows that had consumed them for so long. The ghostly girl watched them depart, her malevolent smile fading into a look of bitter disappointment. For the first time in decades, someone had bested her twisted games, yet her hunger for fear remained unsated, her thirst for suffering unquenched. As the friends disappeared over the horizon, the haunted fairground returned to its slumber, awaiting the arrival of the next unsuspecting souls. The once bright colours of the attractions faded into gloom, swallowed by the encroaching darkness. The whispers of the restless spirits resumed their sinister chorus, echoing through the forgotten corners of this cursed place. And the ghostly girl waited, her playground of horrors hidden beneath the shroud of darkness, her malevolent heart yearning for the day when her games would begin anew. Beneath a tumultuous sky, a man named Richard stumbled through the dense, fog-shrouded forest. The air was thick with the stench of decay, and the twisted branches of ancient trees seemed to claw at him like grasping skeletal fingers. The very atmosphere pulsated with malevolent energy, a palpable sense of dread hanging heavy upon him. His heart raced as he fought to quell the panic rising within, his steps guided by the soft whispers of an ethereal voice that had plagued his dreams for weeks. It had spoken to him of a stranger in dire need, a life that could only be saved through a terrible sacrifice. In the heart of the forest, Richard came upon a clearing bathed in the sickly glow of the moon. A gnarled ancient tree stood at its center, its blackened bark pulsating with an otherworldly energy. Beneath its twisted boughs, a young woman lay bound, her eyes wide with terror. "Help me, please," she cried, her voice barely audible over the howling wind. As Richard approached, the whispers in his head grew louder, more insistent. The ghostly voice spoke of a malevolent force that had held the woman captive, a supernatural entity that demanded a terrible price for her freedom: his own life. His heart ached with the weight of the decision before him, his very soul torn between the instinct to survive and the desire to save the innocent stranger. The woman's eyes pleaded with him, her terror a living thing that clawed at his conscience. "Please," she whispered, "I don't want to die." Richard's mind raced, torn between his desire for self-preservation and the knowledge that he alone had the power to save her. The ethereal voice whispered dark promises, tales of the horrors that awaited him should he choose to make the ultimate sacrifice. "You must decide, mortal," it hissed, its spectral breath cold against his ear. "Will you offer your life to save hers?" Richard looked into the woman's eyes, her terror mirrored his own. He saw the weight of her despair, the burden of her fate resting upon his shoulders, and in that moment, he knew what he must do. "I will do it," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "I will give my life to save hers." A dark laughter filled the air, the wind howling as the malevolent presence revealed its decision. The ancient tree's bark began to peel away, revealing a gaping maw that seemed to hunger for his very soul. "Step forward, mortal," the ghostly voice commanded. "Embrace the darkness and be consumed." With a trembling hand, Richard reached for the tree, feeling the cold grasp of death close around him. As his life began to ebb away, a strange serenity settled over him, the knowledge that his sacrifice would save an innocent life, bringing a measure of peace to his tormented soul. With a final shuddering breath, Richard's life force was consumed by the ancient tree, the darkness swallowing him whole. The woman's bonds fell away, her captor banished by the power of his sacrifice. She stared at the spot where Richard had stood, tears streaming down her face as she whispered her gratitude to the stranger who had given his life to save hers. The haunted forest grew silent, the malevolent energy dissipating into the night. As the first light of dawn broke upon the horizon, the woman emerged from the darkness, forever changed by the selfless act of a man whose name she would never know. In the twilight of a dying sun, a heavy gloom settled over the once vibrant town of Ravenhurst. The air, thick with the stench of decay, hung heavy on the somber hearts of its residents, as if a cruel hand had sown seeds of despair within their very souls. In the heart of this tormented town, two friends, William and Edward, found themselves ensnared in a web of dark desire. They had both fallen in love with the same woman, the bewitching and enigmatic Lilith. Her raven hair and pale, almost translucent skin seemed to dance with the shadows, her piercing green eyes hinting at untold mysteries. As their infatuation with Lilith grew, so too did the darkness within their hearts. Jealousy and hatred festered like rotting fruit, the once unbreakable bond between them crumbling beneath the weight of their obsession. "I cannot bear the thought of you with her, William," Edward whispered one night as they sat in the dimly lit confines of a local tavern. "She is my life, my very soul." "And yet she loves me," William replied, his voice cold and detached. "It is not my fault that she has chosen me over you." In the depths of Edward's despair, a malevolent force began to stir, a supernatural presence drawn to the darkness that consumed him, whispered in his ear, filling his tormented mind with thoughts of vengeance and betrayal. "You can have her, Edward," the sinister voice hissed. "All you need do is embrace the darkness within your heart." As the days passed, Edward succumbed to the seductive whispers of the malevolent spirit, his jealousy twisting into something far more sinister. He plotted his betrayal, vowing to steal Lilith away from William and claim her as his own. One stormy night, under the cloak of darkness, Edward confronted Lilith. He declared his undying love for her and begged her to leave William to be with him instead. "You foolish man," Lilith sneered, her eyes glinting with a cruel light. "Do you not see? I have been playing you both. Your love means nothing to me." Her words cut through Edward like a knife, his heart shattered into 1,000 jagged pieces. In that moment, the malevolent spirit that had been whispering in his ear seized control, its dark power transforming him into a monstrous beast, his human form twisted by hatred and despair. Filled with a demonic rage, the beast that had once been Edward set upon Lilith, tearing her apart with his newfound strength. Her blood seeped into the ground, staining the earth with the darkness of her betrayal. When William discovered the grisly scene, his heart filled with horror and despair. He realized the terrible truth. They had both been manipulated by Lilith's dark enchantments. In their blind obsession, They had allowed themselves to become pawns in her cruel game. As the darkness within Edward consumed him completely, the town of Ravenhurst succumbed to the malevolent power that had been unleashed. The shadows lengthened, the sun's light swallowed by an eternal twilight, and the once happy residents found themselves prisoners of a darkness that would never lift. In the end, the love that had once united William and Edward was replaced by a mutual hatred and despair, their hearts forever tainted by the darkness that had been unleashed by their obsession with the enigmatic and sinister Lilith. Under the melancholic glow of a gibbous moon, the decrepit funeral parlor of Acheron and Sons stood as a testament to the darker side of human nature. The once elegant building, its facade now marred by the inexorable march of time, cast a pall gloom over the desolate streets of the forsaken town. Inside the parlor, Reginald Acheron, the last in a long line of morticians, wrung his hands in despair. The once thriving business, passed down through generations, teetered on the brink of ruin. Bereft of clients, Reginald found himself consumed by a desperate need to preserve his macabre legacy. In the depths of his despair, Reginald stumbled upon an ancient tome, its leather-bound cover adorned with arcane symbols and cryptic runes. With trembling hands he opened the book, its time-worn pages whispering dark secrets and forbidden knowledge. "From the shadows I summon thee," Reginald recited, his voice barely audible over the howling wind that had begun to rise outside. "Bring me the souls I require to save my dying business." As the words left his lips, the candles that illuminated the parlor flickered and died, plunging the room into an abyssal darkness. A sinister presence filled the air, its malevolent energy crackling with dark intent. "You have summoned me, mortal," the presence hissed, its voice like the scraping of nails on a coffin lid. "In return for the souls you seek, I require a sacrifice. Your very essence." Torn between his desire for self-preservation and the need to save his ancestral business, Reginald hesitated. The supernatural force sensing his indecision whispered dark promises of power and prosperity, filling his tormented mind with visions of a future where Acheron and Sons reigned supreme once more. "I accept," Reginald whispered, his voice laden with a resigned desperation. A malevolent laughter filled the air, the wind outside howling in tandem with the dark forces that now held sway over Reginald's fate. The shadows in the room seemed to writhe and twist, coalescing into a monstrous form that reached out to claim the mortician's very soul. As Reginald's essence was consumed by the sinister entity, a terrible transformation began to take hold. His once human form twisted and contorted, his body racked with an unspeakable energy as the darkness within took root. Driven by the supernatural force that now controlled him, Reginald set about the grim task of creating his new clientele. He stalked the streets of the forsaken town, the shadows his accomplice, as he claimed the lives of innocent souls to fuel his twisted enterprise. As the funeral parlor once again thrived, the townsfolk began to whisper of the malevolent presence that had taken root in their midst. They spoke in hushed tones of the once honorable Reginald Acheron, who had sacrificed his soul to save his dying business. Yet the darkness that now consumed Reginald was not sated by the blood that stained his hands. The sinister force that had been unleashed demanded ever more souls, driving him to commit increasingly heinous acts in the name of his macabre legacy. In the end, the funeral parlor of Acheron and Sons became a cursed place, a monument to the darkness that had taken hold of Reginald's heart. And as the shadows lengthened and the moon cast its baleful glow upon the forsaken town, the chilling laughter of the supernatural presence could be heard, echoing through the night as a haunting reminder of the terrible price paid for the pursuit of power and prosperity. Under a sky shrouded in the foreboding embrace of twilight, a young girl named Amelia wandered through the labyrinth forest, her heart heavy with the burden of despair. The twisted trees seemed to leer at her, their gnarled limbs casting monstrous shadows that danced in the gloaming. Lost and alone, Amelia stumbled upon an ancient clearing where the air crackled with an otherworldly energy. In the center of the clearing stood a towering gnarled tree, its blackened bark pulsating with a sinister power that seemed to beckon her forward. As she approached the tree, Amelia heard the whispers of a malevolent voice, its sinister tone sending shivers down her spine. "Join me, child," it hissed, its voice dripping with dark intent. "Join me in a game, and I shall show you the way home." Desperate and afraid, Amelia saw no other option but to accept the mysterious entity's offer. With a trembling voice, she whispered her agreement, sealing her fate in the demonic game that now unfolded before her. I accept," she uttered, her voice barely audible over the rustle of leaves. The shadows in the clearing seemed to come alive, writhing and twisting like serpents as they coalesced into a series of sinister figures. Their faces were obscured, their forms shifting and changing with each passing moment. The malevolent voice laughed, a cruel, mocking sound that echoed through the clearing. "The rules are simple, child. Find the one who holds the key, and you shall be free. But be warned, should you choose incorrectly, you shall be forever bound to this place, a pawn in my eternal game." With a heavy heart, Amelia faced the sinister figures, her mind a whirlwind of terror and uncertainty. One by one she approached them, desperately searching for any clue that might lead her to the key. I choose you," she whispered to one of the figures, her voice trembling with fear. The figure grinned, revealing a row of jagged, razor-sharp teeth. "Incorrect, child," it sneered, its voice dripping with malicious delight. "You have chosen poorly." As the figure spoke, the shadows enveloped Amelia, their cold embrace sending her spiraling into an abyss of despair. She felt her very essence begin to fade, her soul consumed by the darkness that held her captive now. Bound to the malevolent force that had ensnared her, Amelia became a player in its demonic game, forced to prey upon the lost souls who stumbled upon the cursed clearing. With each passing day, her humanity slipped further away, replaced by the cruel, twisted desires of the entity that controlled her. As the shadows lengthened, and the moon cast its baleful glow upon the haunted forest. Amelia's tortured soul became a chilling reminder of the terrible price that must be paid for those who dare to play the demonic game. In the end, the once innocent girl was lost forever, her heart consumed by the darkness that had ensnared her, and as the years passed, her name became a whispered legend, a cautionary tale that spoke of the dangers that lurked within the shadows, waiting for the moment when desperation and fear would drive another lost soul to join the eternal and nightmarish game. Beneath the menacing gloom of twilight, the city of Ebonhurst stood as a monument to mankind's insatiable hunger for power and ambition. Its streets, choked by the tendrils of shadow and despair, echoed with the anguished cries of souls ensnared in the relentless pursuit of their desires. It was in this forsaken place that a man named Thomas found himself consumed by his own ambition. Driven by an insatiable hunger for success, he wandered the city's dark streets, his heart aching with the weight of his unfulfilled dreams. One fateful evening, as Thomas sat in the dimly lit corner of a sordid tavern, he encountered a man of such charisma and magnetism that he could not help but be drawn to him. The stranger, a tall, enigmatic figure named Dorian, seemed to possess a preternatural ability to bend the world to his will. "Dorian," Thomas whispered, his voice heavy with awe. "How do you achieve such success? I've spent my entire life chasing my dreams, and yet they remain forever out of reach." With a sinister smile, Dorian leaned closer, his eyes alight with a cruel fire that seemed to pierce the very depths of Thomas's soul. "I can help you, my friend," he whispered, his voice dripping with dark promises. "Together, we can achieve all that you desire. But be warned, the price is high." Desperate to escape the suffocating grip of his unfulfilled ambition, Thomas agreed to the stranger's offer, sealing his fate in a pact that would forever change the course of his destiny. In the days that followed, Thomas found himself riding a wave of unprecedented success. With Dorian by his side, he climbed the ranks of power and influence, his every desire fulfilled with an almost supernatural ease. But as Thomas achieved his goals, the darkness within him began to fester and grow, fed by the sinister power that Dorian had bestowed upon him. He found himself consumed by a ruthless ambition that knew no bounds, his soul tainted by the malevolent force that now held sway over his entire life. It was then that Dorian revealed the true nature of their bargain. "The price of your success," he whispered, his voice laden with malice, "is simply your soul." Horrified by the revelation, Thomas recoiled from Dorian, his heart aching with the terrible weight of his betrayal. "You have damned me," he cried, his voice choked with despair. "What have I become?" Dorian's laughter echoed through the night, a cruel mocking sound that seemed to reverberate within the depths of Thomas's tormented soul. "You have become what you always desired, my friend," he sneered, his eyes alight with a malevolent glee. "A true master of this dark city." As the years passed, Thomas found himself trapped in the merciless grip of his own ambition, his soul forever bound to the sinister force that had ensnared him. The city of Ebonhurst, now a twisted reflection of his own heart, stood as a chilling reminder of the terrible price that must be paid for those who seek success at any cost. In the end, Thomas's insatiable hunger for power and ambition led him down a path from which there could be no return. His life a cautionary tale that echoed through the streets of the forsaken city, a warning to those who would dare to dabble in the darkness for the promise of success and fulfillment of their dreams. In the heart of an ancient, forgotten forest, there stood a twisted, gnarled tree, its roots buried deep into the loamy soil, feasting upon the marrow of the earth. The tree was shrouded in shadows that seemed to quiver with malevolent intent, its branches adorned with the whispers of an unspeakable darkness. It was said that those who dared to touch the cursed tree would be granted a terrible gift, the knowledge of their own death, the grim details etched into their minds with a cruel, unyielding precision. This grim revelation was accompanied by the knowledge of the exact time of their demise, a ticking clock that haunted their every waking moment. One fateful day, a group of friends ventured into the forest, their hearts filled with the reckless bravado of youth. Among them was a young woman named Abigail, her eyes alight with the fire of curiosity and a thirst for adventure. As they approached the haunted tree, Abigail felt a shiver of fear course through her spine, the sinister energy that emanated from its twisted form seeping into the very core of her being. Yet her curiosity proved to be her undoing, for she could not resist the temptation to touch its cursed bark. The moment her fingers brushed against the tree's gnarled surface, a torrent of darkness flooded her mind, the chilling details of her demise unfolding before her in a grisly tableau. Alongside this terrible vision, a ticking clock echoed in her mind, each second bringing her closer to her inescapable fate. Horrified by the knowledge that had been thrust upon her, Abigail staggered away from the tree, her screams echoing through the forest like a mournful dirge. Her friends, witnessing the transformation that had taken hold of their companion, recoiled in fear, the dark power of the tree now made manifest in the tormented soul of their friends. "Why, Abigail? Why would you touch it?" one of her friends cried out, his voice heavy with despair. I couldn't resist," Abigail whispered, her voice trembling with anguish. "I thought I was brave, but I was a fool. Now I know the exact moment of my death, and there is nothing I can do to stop it." As the days turned into weeks and the weeks to months, the ticking clock that haunted Abigail's every waking moment became a relentless tormentor, its sinister cadence a constant reminder of her impending doom. Her once vibrant spirit withered under the weight of her terrible burden, her once radiant eyes now hollow and lifeless, their light extinguished by the cruel fate that awaited her. In the end, the haunted tree's grim prophecy came to pass, the cruel details of Abigail's demise unfolding with a chilling precision that left no room for hope or salvation. Her friends, forever scarred by the memory of their lost companion, would go on to tell her tragic tale, a cautionary reminder of the terrible price to be paid for those who dare to dabble in darkness that lies within the shadows of the ancient forests. And as the moon cast its baleful glow upon the twisted tree, its branches adorned with the whispers of unspeakable darkness, the chilling echoes of Abigail's screams lingered in the air, a haunting testament to the grim power that had claimed her soul. In the village of Morwenstow, nestled within the dark embrace of a primordial forest, there existed a macabre rite of passage. As each boy reached the cusp of manhood, he was forced to confront his deepest fears in a nightmarish realm known as the Shadowlands. The Shadowlands were a place of unspeakable horrors, where the twisted echoes of their darkest fears took form, a cruel test that would determine their fate in the harsh world that awaited them. Among the boys of Morwenstow there lived a young lad named Edward, whose heart was consumed by the dread of the impending trial. As the day of his descent into the Shadowlands drew near, he found himself plagued by night terrors, the shadows of his room taking on the menacing forms of the horrors that awaited him. On the eve of his journey, Edward's father, a grizzled man with eyes that had seen the darkness that lay within the hearts of men, offered his son a somber warning. "Edward," he said, his voice heavy with the weight of experience, "the Shadowlands will show you things that will test your very soul. But remember, you must face them head on, for only then will you emerge a man." As Edward descended into the nightmarish realm, the oppressive darkness enveloped him, its tendrils snaking through his mind, giving form to his deepest, most primordial fears. Monstrous creatures, their forms born from the darkest recesses of his imagination, rose from the gloom, their eyes filled with malevolence and hunger. Edward's heart pounded in his chest as he confronted the first of his fears. A grotesque figure, its visage a twisted mirror of his own. The creature whispered insidious words, taunts that echoed the doubts and insecurities that had plagued him his entire life. "You are weak," it hissed, its voice dripping with venom. "You will never be a man." Summoning every ounce of courage, Edward fought back, his voice trembling but defiant. "No," he cried, staring the creature down. "I am stronger than you, and I will not be defeated by my own doubts." As the creature vanished, Edward was beset by a new horror. The spectre of his deceased mother, her once kind eyes now filled with hatred and disdain. "You killed me," she whispered, her voice a cruel mockery of the love she had once shown him. "You are the reason I am dead." Tears streaming down his face, Edward fought against the anguish that threatened to consume him. "I loved you, mother," he said, his voice breaking. "But your death was not my fault. I will honor your memory by becoming the man you believed I could be." As the final spectre dissolved into the darkness, Edward found himself facing a colossal beast, its form a grotesque amalgamation of all the fears he had conquered. The creature roared, its voice a deafening cacophony of terror and despair. But Edward, now tempered by the trials he had faced, stood tall. With a cry of defiance, he drove the creature back, his newfound courage a shining beacon against the encroaching darkness. As dawn broke over Merwenstow, Edward emerged from the Shadowlands, his heart forever changed by the harrowing ordeal. The village gathered to celebrate his transformation, their eyes filled with a mixture of awe and relief. For Edward had faced his darkest fears and emerged triumphant, a man forged in the crucible of terror and despair, a testament to the indomitable spirit that lay within the heart of every man who dared to confront the darkness that dwells within him. In the depths of a forgotten valley, shrouded in a darkness that seemed to breathe with malevolent intent, there stood the unholy sanctuary of the Fellborn, a demonic cult whose twisted rituals had long been the stuff of whispered nightmares. Into this world of unspeakable horrors, a child was born, her fate forever entwined with the dark machinations of the cult. Named Lilith, she was destined to become the vessel of an ancient malevolent power, her life a cruel sacrifice in the pursuit of ultimate darkness. As Lilith grew, she became acutely aware of the sinister forces that surrounded her, her every waking moment haunted by the shadowy spectres of her impending doom. But within her heart, there burned a fierce, defiant flame, a longing to escape the grasp of the Fellborn and forge a life free of the darkness that threatened to consume her.
You must embrace the darkness, child,
intoned the High Priestess, her voice a chilling caress that seemed to snake through the air, the very embodiment of the evil that held sway over the cult.
Only then will you become what you were meant to be.
Lilith, her heart filled with a quiet, seething defiance, shook her head, her eyes alight with a courage that belied her tender years. "I refuse," she whispered, her voice trembling with the weight of her decision. "I will not allow myself to be consumed by evil." As the Fellborn prepared to enact their final sinister ritual, Lilith found herself ensnared in a desperate struggle for her very soul. With each passing moment, the darkness encroached upon her, its tendrils snaking through her heart and mind, seeking to claim her as its own. Yet Lilith fought back, her spirit a shining beacon of light amidst the swirling maelstrom of darkness. She reached out to the world beyond the Fellborn's unhallowed sanctuary, her thoughts filled with desperate prayers for salvation. It was then that a mysterious figure appeared, his form wreathed in shadow, yet his eyes aglow with a fierce, resolute light. "I have heard your prayers, child," he said, his voice a soothing balm amidst the storm of terror that raged around her. "I will help you break free of this darkness." Together, Lilith and the mysterious stranger fought to unravel the Fellborn's dark enchantments, their combined power a force to be reckoned with. As the darkness began to wane, the High Priestess' voice rose in a chilling wail of despair, her sinister machinations thwarted by the indomitable spirit of a young girl who dared to defy the darkness. When the final strands of the cult's twisted power severed, the Fellborn sanctuary crumbled to dust, its dark energy forever banished to the winds. Lilith, her heart now free of the shadow that had once threatened to consume her, embraced the stranger, her gratitude shining in her tear-filled eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice filled with hope and relief. Thank you for showing me that there is goodness in the world, even in the darkest of places. The stranger smiled, his eyes alight with a quiet wisdom that seemed to stretch back through the ages. It was not I who saved you, Lilith, he said, his voice a gentle caress. It was the light within your own heart, the unwavering belief that you could break free from the darkness that sought to claim you. And so, Lilith stepped forward into the world, her heart a testament to the power of hope. She would go on to become a beacon of light in a world filled with darkness, her courage and defiance inspiring others to break free from the chains that bind them. In a world shrouded in darkness and despair, there existed a twisted tapestry of fate, weaving together the lives of 3 souls, each destined to suffer the same cruel end. Unbeknownst to them, their fates were entwined, bound by a supernatural force that reveled in their torment. The first of these souls was a reclusive scholar named Malcolm, who had dedicated his life to the pursuit of knowledge, seeking solace in the dusty tomes that lined the walls of his labyrinthine library. As the years passed, Malcolm became increasingly consumed by his obsession, the darkness within him growing ever more potent, his heart filled with a gnawing, insatiable hunger. In another corner of the world, there lived a gifted artist named Celeste, her soul aflame with the divine spark of creation. Yet, as her fame and fortune grew, so did the darkness that lurked within her heart, its tendrils snaking through her thoughts, tainting the beauty of her work with a sinister, malevolent energy. Finally, there was a wanderer named Rowan, a solitary figure who roamed the farthest reaches of the world, seeking solace in the vast, untamed wilderness. But as his journey continued, he found himself increasingly beset by an oppressive sense of despair, the shadows of his past creeping ever closer, a relentless tide that threatened to engulf him. As the supernatural force that bound their fates tightened its grip, Malcolm, Celeste and Rowan found themselves haunted by dark visions, their dreams filled with ominous portents of horrors that lay in wait. Each was plagued by a growing sense of dread, their hearts heavy with the burden of an unseen terror that seemed to suffocate their very breath. Malcolm, in the midst of his studies, began to hear sinister whispers that seemed to echo through the very fabric of reality, voices that beckoned him towards a darkness that knew no bounds. "I must know," he murmured, his voice trembling with a desperate, fevered intensity. "I must unlock the secrets of forbidden knowledge." Celeste, her once vibrant works now filled with grotesque and macabre images, becoming increasingly tormented by her own creations and her once brilliant mind teetering on the brink of madness. "I cannot escape it," she cried, her voice a haunting lament that seemed to reverberate through the very air. "The darkness has claimed me, and there is no turning back." And Rowan, now a shadow of his former self, found himself trapped in an endless nightmare, his every step a futile attempt to outrun the darkness that relentlessly pursued him. "I can't escape it," he whispered, his voice hollow and broken. "No matter how far I travel, the darkness is always with me." As their fates converged, Malcolm, Celeste, and Rowan were drawn inexorably towards a final cataclysmic confrontation with the supernatural force that had ensnared them. Their souls a battleground upon which the ultimate struggle between light and darkness would be waged. As they faced the abyss, their hearts heavy with the weight of their impending doom, they found solace in one another. Their shared torment a grim reminder of the cruel, unyielding nature of their destiny. "No matter what fate is in store for us," Malcolm said, his voice filled with a quiet, resolute determination, "we must stand together against this darkness." "And in doing so," Celeste added, her eyes shining with a fierce, defiant light, "perhaps we may yet find a way to break the chains that bind us." But even as they banded together, the darkness continued to close in, their fates entwined in a twisted dance of suffering and despair. The supernatural force that had orchestrated their torment reveled in their struggle, its dark laughter echoing through the very fabric of their souls. As the day of their confrontation drew near, Malcolm, Celeste, and Rowan found themselves in the midst of an ancient forgotten temple, its walls etched with twisted sigils of a long-lost civilization. It was here that the final battle would be waged, the culmination of the dark force's sinister machinations. With their hearts heavy, but their souls resolute, the three faced the darkness head-on, their combined strength a beacon of light amidst the swirling maelstrom of malevolence. The supernatural force, its power unparalleled, seemed to taunt them, its presence a chilling reminder of the futility of their defiance. Yet, as the battle raged on, it became clear that the force had underestimated the depth of their resolve. For Malcolm, Celeste, and Rowan, their shared suffering had forged a bond stronger than any that had come before, their hearts united in the face of an unspeakable horror that sought to destroy them. And so, as the darkness began to wane, the three stood together, their spirits soaring with the knowledge that they had defied the fate that had been cruelly thrust upon them. The supernatural force, its power now broken, let out a howl of despair, its twisted essence forever banished to the void. With the darkness vanquished, Malcolm, Celeste, and Rowan found themselves standing amidst the ruins of the ancient temple, their hearts filled with a quiet, bittersweet triumph. For although they had emerged victorious, the scars of their ordeal would remain with them forever, a grim reminder of the price they had paid. "We have faced the darkness and emerged victorious," Malcolm said, his voice filled with weary determination. "But we must never forget the suffering we endured. And though our lives may be forever marked by this battle," Celeste added, her eyes shining with a fierce, defiant light, "we have shown that even the darkest of fates can be overcome." As they turned to leave the temple, Rowan paused, his gaze lingering on the ancient sigils that line the walls. "We have broken the chains that bound us," he said, his voice a solemn whisper. "But we must never forget that there are others who still suffer." And with that, the three set out into the world, their hearts united in the knowledge that they had faced the darkness and emerged triumphant. Together, they would seek out those who, like them, were trapped in the cruel embrace of fate, their lives a testament to the indomitable spirit of the human heart and the enduring power of hope. Hi, it's me, Liam again, your narrator. Just want to say a big thank you to all of you who have stayed right up until the end of these stories. It means a lot. And I just want to ask you what every YouTuber on every channel always asks. Please comment, like, share, subscribe, and all of that obvious stuff. It really does help out the channel. Alright, take care. See you in the next lot of stories. Bye bye.